Hi, I'm Kassy, and this is the Spark Konnect, a podcast about what brings us to life: connection, creativity, courage, and the moments that spark real change. I'll be your host, bringing my experience as a speaker, consultant, and lifelong believer in showing up as your full self. In this series, Arts and Facilitation, you'll hear from inspiring voices, facilitators, trainers, speakers, and everyday humans who are also artists, lighting up the world in their own unique, creative ways. This is your space to reflect, reset, and reignite, because the spark is already in you. Let's light it up. My goodness, you're about to meet Rusty Shields, a trained opera singer turned learning and development consultant. Proof that the stage may change, but the performance lives on. Rusty's journey from music to training is filled with heart, humor, and a whole lot of high notes. He shares how his artistic background shapes his facilitation style, leading with vulnerability, connection, and just a touch of dramatic flair. Fun fact: he's sung the national anthem for a women's basketball team for 11 years without a single loss. He swears it's because of his singing, so no pressure. In this conversation, Rusty talks about bringing artistry into education, the joy of fun in learning, and his latest project, a new model for inclusion called the Spark Effect. I like that. As Rusty says, I warm up with music too. And after hearing him, you'll probably start doing the same. All right. I'm so excited to be here today with you, Rusty, and I just can't wait to get in. I have a feeling we're going to get some very beautiful sounding footage today that I can't wait for our listeners and our audience to get to experience. So without further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us about the type of artist that you are, Rusty, and also what kind of work you do in the world of learning and development.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Kassy. I'm so excited to be here. When I got the invitation and got it on the schedule, I wanted it to be sooner than later because I couldn't wait any longer than to get it on the schedule. So hello, everyone. My name is Rusty Shields. I'm the owner of Developify Consulting. We are a learning and development consulting firm based out of Bloomington, Indiana, so just south of Indianapolis, Indiana. And we focus primarily on learning and development in the cases of trained facilitators, training instructional designers, adult learning theory. That type of thing is really what we focus on, and helping learning professionals just be better learning professionals with a human-centered approach to learning.
I mean, it's my favorite topic in the whole world. We were so meant to meet. There are many, many reasons why you and I were meant to meet, Rusty, and I'm just thrilled to learn more about it. So you are not only a trainer of trainers and designers, but you also do something else that's pretty darn cool.
Yes, so my art, since we were talking about facilitation, arts and facilitation, so I am a trained opera singer. So I actually went to school for opera. I started in instrumental education and switched to opera performance and choral conducting. So I've kind of ran the gamut there in those three realms.
You are an opera singer and a choral director. Did I hear that?
Yes, that's correct. I actually still direct a choir every year in January in North Carolina. So I do that once a year.
Oh my gosh. So when you said opera singer, okay, that's a little bit different than the norm. Like, how many people do you know that you meet? I sing opera. And of course, the first person that comes to mind to me, actually, it's two people that I know of that are famously trained opera singers. Cyndi Lauper, one. And then number two, obviously, Freddie Mercury, right? So that's, and the level and amazing I know there's a lot of other opera singers that are classically, I know that, but those are the first two that come to mind for me. And maybe that says something about my musical interests there as well. But it's so interesting to me. How did you decide? Well, I have a question for you, and then I want to talk about how you decided on opera. But would you say that you are an artist who found training or a trainer who found artistry?
I am definitely an artist who found training. From the earliest years I can remember in life, I was always running around the house singing songs as loud as I could. And mom would always tell me to be quiet, you're being too loud until she really learned I could sing. And then she said, sing all the time, sing all the time. So from the earliest memories, I've always been in band, playing instruments in marching band and concert band. That's actually what I went to college for. So what I got my scholarships for were actually for band. And then I had an interesting story that switched me to vocal, so to singing. And then that's where it kind of really took off from there. So it wasn't until after I graduated from graduate school, actually with 2 degrees in music, that I found training. So very interesting journey to get to training, but I was definitely an artist before I was ever a trainer.
Oh my gosh. And so how do you end up in opera as a vocalist?
So funny enough, I pull a lot of this story also into my facilitation when I coach facilitators. If I were to ask you, you may know the answer to this, but how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Mm.
Practice, practice, practice. So
I got
same
real
thing
specific there
here.
for a moment. I was like, what area? What do we think? Of course.
It's on the
Generally
corner of this
speaking.
part of Central Park. Yeah, over here. No, it's no. I would always heard practice, practice, practice. I'd always heard that, and I practiced. So I was a tuba player. So I always played the tuba, lowest end of the spectrum in the musical voices was the tuba, the lowest bass instrument from the brass family, and always played that and excelled in it through high school. Won many awards, first chair in these orchestras, all kinds of things, and went to college for that. And when I practiced tuba, I would practice so many hours. Like a lot of people say, you practiced like a piano player. Because if you know anything about piano players, they practice long hours, long, like 8 hours a day almost. I would practice tuba the same way. I would get to the point where I actually had like blisters on my lips sometimes from playing so long. And then I would go into my tuba lesson, and my tuba professor would just rip me a new one and I was like, am I ever going to be good enough for you? And he actually said no. And so I said, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm not going to continue beating myself up over this. And the only thing I knew how to do was music. I was 4 years into my core music classes. It's a 5-year degree. All I had left was my student teaching, and I would have had my education degree in instrumental music. And I quit cold turkey. I could not bring myself to continuing to do that. So I stepped back and said, what do I do now? And one of my friends said, why don't you get in the choir as a non-major, just till you figure out what you're going to do? So I was like, why not? So I got in the choir as a non-major. And first concert that we had, one of the voice professors came up to me after it was over and said, I heard your voice over everybody else's in the choir. And I said, that's usually a bad thing when you can hear one voice over the entire choir. And she said, no, what happened was the entire tenor section crystallized their voices to yours. You sounded like one singer as a section. And because you were in the center, everyone matched their style of singing to you, so it sounded like one voice. She says, you need to be a singer. You need to be a vocal major. I said, there's no way. I've never done that ever in my life. I've never been in a choir, never sang a solo. No, it's just not a good thing.
Wow. And so wait,
She
how
said,
old were you at this point? You'd already done 4 of your 5 years of your first degree?
Yep, yep. Again, I was 22 years old at this point.
Okay.
And so she said, how about you try one semester of non-major voice lessons? So it's one 30-minute lesson per week. It's only 30 minutes, not an hour-long lesson, and you only have to memorize 3 songs the entire semester. I said, okay. I said, let's give it a try. I've got nothing to lose here. So I got in and we started having our lesson. And she said, I've got a crazy idea here. I said, okay. She said, I want you to audition for the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions. I said, you're crazy because you have to sing 5 opera arias in 5 different languages. What happened to only 3 songs this semester? And so she says, trust me, I think there's something to this. I said, okay, again, what have I got to lose? I see it as an opportunity. It's a green light. Let's try it out. So then I prepared my songs, went to the state level because you have to go state level, district level, regional level, national level. So there's
And
4
one
rounds.
second, when you said you prepared your songs, 5 songs, 5 different languages.
Yes, 5 different languages. The whole little learning curve there, let me tell you.
I can only imagine.
One of them could be English. Thank goodness. One of them could be English. So technically four
At
languages
least
because
you knew how to pronounce the words of one of
I
them.
was decent in one language at least. So we got there, and so finally I'm like, okay, over to this day. And you go in singing one song of your choice. They can pick any of the other four. So that's kind of how the audition went. I was near the end of the list that day, and just to give you a perspective, there were 35 singers that day. So I was one of 35, and they were only taking three to the next round. So first time ever, by the way, ever performing in front of anybody as a singer, by the way, never having done that before. When the scores came out, I placed second out of 35 singers, having never done that before.
Do you remember what you sang?
Man, I went in with the an aria from The Elixir of Love by Donizetti. It's called Una furtiva lagrima. So very beautiful song. And then they actually called for my English aria, which I was super okay with after having sung the Italian to start with. So sang that, and so I got second place, which moved me on to the next round. There were four regions in our area, so the top three singers, so 12 of us. And then so here comes the next audition, next round, and out of the 12, they were only taking one person to New York City for the finals because the finals happened at the Metropolitan Opera. And so they took one person. And out of all 12 singers, I placed second again. So having never studied voice before, my first semester, I had gotten second at the state and second at the regional and was one spot from going to New York City. So that kind of told me that maybe there is something to this singing thing.
Wow.
And so as soon as that was done, I actually changed my major to vocal performance, and I was actually in all of the operas from then on at Arkansas State University, where I got my undergraduate degree.
Wow. So the
Yeah.
degree changed to a vocal performance degree. But
hmm
did you say that you have a second degree after that?
hmm Yeah, so choral conducting. I always loved choral music when I really got in choir and really fell in love with it. My choral director was someone I was very close to and just really enjoyed it. And so apparently I had a knack for it as well, if you want to call it a knack there, or hidden talent for that as well. Did very well in that, so I did that as well. And then fast forward to graduate school. I was like, well, if I'm going to be an opera singer, I want to go to the most prestigious graduate school there is around. And in the opera world, that would be Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music. And so I auditioned as a graduate student, and it's hard to get in there. And I remember walking into the recital hall, and, coming from a school like Arkansas State University, there were only like three professors in your auditions. And then I walk into one Indiana University and there's 37 people in my audition, professors watching on. So that was a little overwhelming. So you go in again, I think it's they've got 5 songs, I think again, that you went in with, and you go in singing one and they pick one. I went in and picked a song, and then again they picked my English art song after that. And I was thinking, what is it with the picking of the easier song second? Or maybe I saw it as easy and they saw it as more difficult. I don't know. But again, I was the last audition of the last weekend of the graduate audition season. So I was, after a whole season of auditions, I was the last singer on the last day of auditions, and I got accepted into the graduate school. So yeah, did the same thing there and had a really great time there. But as a part of that school, you also had to have a secondary area of study. So naturally, mine was going to be conducting, since that's what I already did. And when you have to audition for that area of programming too. So I prepared a little piece of music, and they had a full choir auditioning their doctoral program students and their master's program students. They just threw me in there because I came mid-year, like in January. They were like, just you can go in, conduct your one song, that'll be your audition, and we'll just get you in the program. After I got done conducting my piece, they actually offered me a scholarship to be a full-time master's student for the conducting program, just because I
You're
did
just
so
a
well.
talented guy, Rusty. You're just like, yes, we want you. We need you to do it. This is amazing.
Well, it's just fun, and that's the biggest thing that I like to bring to the table is it's just the fun. Like I don't worry about things too often about how this is going to go. Like we've talked about previously, what's going to happen is going to happen. Just going to have fun doing what I'm doing, which I think has a direct correlation to what we do in training. But I went on and finished my studies there. Was not very excited about the world of opera when I got into the world and started auditioning. It was a lot more materialistic in terms of the way you look. versus the way you sound, and I was not okay with that. So I went back to what I knew I could do, and that was teach. And so I knew I had a knack for teaching, and so I started teaching and I really enjoyed it. Side note too, I did always work as a subcontractor, as a consultant all through college to help pay for school. So I was actually training leadership development courses for organizations every step of the way to help pay for school. So I knew I could teach.
That's incredible. So I have a question for you that I think will bridge us to the learning and development side. Are you still connected to the university in some kind of way, or in any way? And
Mhm.
what happened recently that they became very interested in the other things that you do? Let me just put it that way.
So Indiana University here in town, they have a lot of sports programs, but I sing the national anthem quite a bit for the university. And in fact, the women's basketball program is one of those programs. When I first started singing for them, it was the previous coach. And I sang for that program that year, and then he left. But then the new coach came along, and she's now been here 10 years. And I have sang the national anthem for 11 years for that program. And out of
Yes.
all of the games I've sang for, they've never lost a game in 11 years. So they are 122 to nothing when I sing.
Oh my
So
gosh.
she is a little superstitious about me when it comes to singing, but I'm still really connected to the university in many ways. In fact, they hire me to do some disc trainings from time to time at the university, but I'm still really connected to the university as well around here. So it's something that I really enjoy doing.
And then don't you have something, you're connected to your fraternity as well?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it's very interesting. So it's funny. I got initiated into Phi Mu Alpha, which is a music fraternity for men, and I was initiated in 2003 at Arkansas State University, and was always a member of the fraternity, a very active member. In fact, I still conduct some of the courses for the fraternity every January. In the state of North Carolina, so it's actually for the fraternity. But they recently had our national convention was recently it happened just as last week, and I was nominated to be national president for the fraternity. And so the election was last week, and there was a candidates forum in the evening, one evening, and they just had to ask us questions randomly. We didn't get them ahead of time, and so many people were just impressed with how easily I answered questions that I had never heard or seen before. And I actually told a lot of people, I said, that really just comes from being a facilitator. We're used to being able to field questions and answer questions on our feet. Sometimes you don't know what's going to be asked, and you don't want to say, let me get back to you on that. So you use your facilitation techniques and your strategies and your experience to ask them powerful questions that are going to hopefully spark some kind of creation of their own answer that's going to end up, educating everybody else in the room. And then we don't even have to talk. We can just save the breath. So it's
Was that
something
what you
that
did during your interview then?
I didn't really get to ask questions because
No,
I
because
only
they
had
wanted to hear from you. So in
correct,
that
correct, right.
particular context, that would have been strange.
What I did is I fed them human-centered answers, things that they want to hear. I wanted to think about if I was in their shoes, what would I want to hear from
Yeah.
somebody, with what's going on, in the realm of things in our fraternity. So it's one of those things where I had 2 minutes to answer. And in fact, the first question I answered in a minute instead of taking the whole 2 minutes. And someone actually sent me a message. They were like, Rusty, take the full 2 minutes. Why are you rushing through that? And then from then on, like I got in this rhythm. And it's one of those things where I knew what I wanted to say, but it also comes from being able to just deliver things in a way that are impactful and succinct. And it's what everyone needs to hear.
Right. Yeah, there's something that happens that we facilitators and trainers learn to get to the point. And I know that I need to make that point so that you have an opportunity to reflect on it, respond to it. And I know that I'm going to need that time. And so I have
Hmm.
trained over the years to try not to talk as much to get to
Hmm.
that point. That probably happened to you in that moment, didn't it? A little bit.
Oh, yes, 100%. I always tell my facilitators, I actually follow a lot of Mel Robbins' 5-second rule and tell them, silence is not bad. Give it time to resonate with you. But even when you ask questions as a facilitator, I also count to 5 before even saying anything, because someone's going to get uncomfortable with the silence and start to engage. Is what
Right.
I tell people too. So sometimes the wait, the prep, the time for it to process is a big deal. So it comes in handy. Being a facilitator comes in handy more times than not in my entire life.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so interesting to me because I'm conducting these interviews. What can we learn? What can we trainers and facilitators and presenters learn from those that perform or that are artists in some way? And what you just described was what you were teaching the musical community from our world.
Hmm.
So the opposite of the intention of this interview today, which of course it goes both ways. And
Hmm.
it's just such a beautiful thing to think about, how we bring so much of ourselves. For me, I'm thinking I was always drawn in university to well, for one, I didn't know what in the world I wanted to get a degree in, but I knew that I was drawn to performance and people and experiences and energy. And I ended up in the world of public speaking, but with an emphasis and a minor, if you will, in theater and performance. And then I get into the corporate way, and then I find training and development, and I'm like, oh, I can be a trainer. That's an actor in the business world, essentially. And then I get into the business world, and they didn't really want me to talk actory. They wanted me to minimize that because somehow I think people feel that it isn't to be taken seriously, that it's something that you do on the weekends or that you do in the evenings, you know. And so I kind of grew up in my career minimizing that and then saying, well, wait a second, let's just be honest about what we're really doing here and let's bring this to the forefront, especially in this age of AI, and we're seeking our humanity. And I just really believe our humanity is in this artistry, you know,
Yeah,
and
it's
let's
so
allow
funny.
this to take the center stage, you know.
I remember I was teaching an onboarding class for an organization, and the CFO was in the onboarding class, a new CFO, and he asked me at the break. He says, "What's your background in Rusty?" He's like, "You're a really good trainer. You know, where did you start learning all of this?" I said, "Well, my background's in music." And he says, "What do you mean it's in music?" He said, "That's a total 180." He said, "Here's this piece of music that I get in my voice lesson. It's the same black notes that is on every single page for every single person that gets this piece of music." Said, "So then it's up to me to take this same black note and prepare it in a way for an audience that I'm going to sing it for that may know the piece or may not know the piece. If it's in a different language, then how can I present that language in a way that they're going to understand it, having not ever heard that language before?" So I have to think about the audience and I have to think about what's their level of understanding of it, or how do I prepare this piece of music to deliver it in a way to an audience that doesn't know it. I said it's the same thing with training. I'm being asked to come in and present content to a group of people. It's the same content that you're going to get anywhere else when you talk about this topic area. It's just going to be presented in a way that this group of people is going to understand it. So I'm going to put my strategy and techniques on it, how I'm going to deliver this. And after it's over, he said, "Okay, I guess they are the same thing." I said, "It is 100%. They're the same thing."
Oh, you know, as you're describing this, you're bringing so much of yourself to that experience. It's making me think about a couple of questions that I thought of around vulnerability and expression. Because also you mentioned you didn't like what you learned about the opera world and what the expectations were about. You mentioned how you're supposed to look.
Mhm.
How do you navigate vulnerability as both an artist and a facilitator?
I think they have to be fully turned on for you to reach your audiences. I think you have to show that you're human. And I think to show that you're human, you have to be vulnerable as well. You have to be able to show a piece of yourself, of who you are. Otherwise, you're not going to have that psychological safety that's going to be set up to make your audience feel strong enough, comfortable enough, safe enough to want to share in the experience. You know, that's more one-sided sage on the stage type of experience, where I would want more of the facilitated guide on the side experience. It isn't going to be guide on the side if they're just going to not engage with you. So to me, whether I am a facilitator sharing information, you can ask anybody that's been in my classes. They know everything about me by the time they leave the class. Same thing as an artist. When I was a role, well, putting on this role as an artist, that everyone knew who this artist was by the time that was over. So I think without vulnerability, I think we are, like Brene Brown says, we're keeping our armor on, you know, like we have to take that armor off to be able to have a rumble, you know. And so that's one of those things where I think transparency is an essential element of facilitation.
I remember feeling like the way that I felt when I was first more vulnerable than I'd ever been. And actually, it was
It was recent in the last couple of years. I was on a podcast and we were talking normal stuff about virtual training, this and that in my career. And I was supposed to be there as the expert. And the question was about like imposter syndrome stuff. And I never really said out loud any of that stuff before. And then I found that afterwards, I like immediately I felt okay about it, but then I started to second guess it after it was done. And I then had this sort of like visceral experience with I now know what it means to need to be brave, to be vulnerable, because I finally did something more vulnerable than I'd ever let myself do before by sharing that. And it's not easy to do. It's super like I've been the receiver of other people's vulnerability and I'm nothing but supportive and you're okay. And and in fact, as a facilitator, teaching people that it's okay, you're fine. And I'll hug you all through it virtually, whatever it may be. But when I found myself on that other side and really doing it in a way that I'd never done before, I was stunned at how difficult it was. But then I remember going and listening to, I think it was Matthew McConaughey of all people at ICE a couple of years ago. And he said, we don't really care about your success. We care about all your pains and struggles and how you got there. That's the stuff where we relate to each other. And we do need to develop that. It's like how do you develop that though? How do you think that your background in performance as a singer, does it help you get through those times? Or does it what do you draw on from that you can end up bringing into your facilitation? If there's anything there, I'm kind of brainstorming out loud, if you will.
Hmm. Well, I think it's a matter of giving yourself permission. I think that's a big deal because I think a lot of facilitators or people in the training space feel like they have to maintain this level of expectation or intentions, as I like to say, of how you should look and perform as a facilitator. Like there's that professional presence piece that people say, professional presence is this, the way you dress, the way you look, the way that's all good and fine. That's great to have those expectations and intentions, but at the same time, you can't take away who you are. Like you can't take away your identity. It's almost like when I first started trying to be a facilitator, I was trying to be Tony Robbins. It was not working well. I'm not Tony Robbins. No one's Tony Robbins but Tony. And it took me a while to figure out that I've got to find who I am as a facilitator, but I have to be okay and give myself permission to break the mold when it comes to being a facilitator, because you don't want to look like all the rest of the facilitators in the world, just be, oh, it's just another training. I don't want it to be just another training. So you kind of have to give yourself permission to be vulnerable and know that it's going to be okay, because it's going to show them who you are and probably is going to be a great example of who they're okay to be as well. I think it's just a part of inclusion in general, which is a huge piece of my model that I'm creating. Like, inclusion's huge for me. I was in Nebraska last year, and this is actually the premise for my entire book that I'm writing. The
Yeah, let's talk
introductory.
about that. Rusty, you're writing a book. You just mentioned you have a model. Tell us more about
Yep.
both of these things and the specific detail about inclusion as well.
Yeah, it's hugely important to me. So I'm a huge transformation person. I remember years ago, my mentor, Sardik Love, was telling me, Rusty, you need to write a book. No, I'm not ready yet. Rusty, you need to write a book. No, I'm not ready yet. It was like 6 years of him beating me on the head. And finally looked at him and said, okay, like what would I even write about? He says, write about transformation. He said, you've come from an opera singer to a facilitator. You've been through a physical transformation. So I had, a gastric surgery years ago and lost 200 pounds. So you've transformed in that way. You've transformed the way that you went from trainer to facilitator, even, the way that you are transforming your experiences to be very much more experiential learning activities. That word transformation. But I'm also a huge connector. So I'm a connection catalyst, is what I like to tell people. And so I was like, how can I put those two things together? So I started researching transformative connection. Wasn't really a word. So it's something I kind of put together. And what really kind of put those pieces together for me is when I visited the 9/11 Memorial in New York City. And if you don't know much about the history of that memorial, it was designed by a gentleman named Michael Arad, Arad, and he was awarded the contract to design the memorial. And what he did is he could have just displayed everyone's names on the memorial and said, alphabetical order, we'll just put them there. That's boring. No, why do it that way? So what he said is, how can I arrange them in a way that it had a meaning? And so what he did is he interviewed all of the family and friends of every single victim and figured out how they were all connected and said, is there anybody that you think that this person would want to have their name beside? And so they actually created what was called meaningful adjacency. And what it is every single person's name on the entire memorial is next to somebody they're connected to. So they've got a bond, a chain of 2,977 names that have a meaning of being beside that person. And so that just blew my mind that there was that much connection between every single person that died in the 9/11 attacks. And so that just had my mind going. I was like, how can I begin to create experiences where every single person in the room is connected in a way when they leave that they want to continue their connection after it's over, instead of a transactional experience where I'm swiping my card at the store and I'm done, moved on to the next transaction. I want learning experiences instead of, our experiences a lot of times are the event is over and we're on to already designing and delivering the next training event. Okay, we're checking the box because there's this much time to do this many things. We're on to the next event. Those are transactional experiences. Even as facilitators, we should be creating transformational experiences where we empower people to use the collective experience in the room for a long time. And so I created a 4-step model called the Transformative Connection Model for facilitators. And that was kind of the start of it. In fact, I wrote an article for TD Magazine, and it was the feature article in September of last year. So the whole idea about the book and the story, there's a whole article about it you can read, but that's what jump-started this whole idea. And so the 4-step model really, it starts with things like, what's your vehicle? What's the vehicle that starts the connection? For me, music is my vehicle. That's how I can connect with somebody. What's one thing you can use that doesn't take energy that you can connect to somebody with? That's your vehicle. You also need to know the why. Like, why are we having this connection, right? There's a purpose to everything. As long as we know the why and what we each want to get out of it, then we can build on that why so it becomes more of a let me help you help me type of situation. The third step is the inclusion engine. The inclusion engine is, how can I continue to feed into you? It's not you belong, it's we belong. It's not should always be a focus. And inclusion means so many things to many different people. It doesn't have to be race. It doesn't have to be sexual orientation. It doesn't have to be gender. It just needs to be what makes you feel like you belong in this learning experience, and how can I begin to feed that inclusion for you? It could be allowing you to draw on your name card, your name placard, as many pictures as you want to identify how you are feeling today, and then the last one is the empowerment action. And that's, how can I help empower each of us to use the collective wisdom in the room, not just the collective wisdom that the facilitator is giving, because it's not about me, it's about the learners in the room. How can we begin to build those kinds of futuristic continuation of these connections so we can continue to support each other for a long time? I'm in a chat room with 12 other learners from my very first facilitated experience through ATD. They put us all in a chat room, that group did, on LinkedIn, and to this day, 5 years later, we still chat almost every day. I've helped them get interviews and get jobs. I've helped them with projects they've worked on. They've helped me with data that I needed for different things. So that's the kind of long-term transformational experiences that I'm hoping that this model creates. And so from that, I've made a proposal to get the book picked up, and they want to see a couple of extra things tweaked. And so now I'm going to include instructional design in that as well, because it should start with instructional design.
I
You
see.
should be thinking about the transformational experience from then all the way through the delivery. So
Yeah, because
that's
there's
coming
things that
down the
need to be
pipe.
put in place to support that kind of structure and those
Hmm.
kind of materials that would allow for that to occur.
Yep.
Is this
Yep.
what you called the spark effect?
Well, yes and no. This kind of fed the spark effect. So I think the spark effect is going to be the second book. So
Okay.
I think I've already got a second book right behind this. It's funny. The spark effect has only been something that's come up within the last 6 months, honestly.
Okay. Well, that's why, I mean, one of the reasons why you and I are definitely connected. We
Correct.
got to hear all about the spark effect as soon as you develop it out more, Rusty.
Yeah,
The
no, it's
Spark
great.
Connect is very interested in everything that Rusty is talking about.
No, I love it. And that is where the brand is really developing for me. Like I've been
Yeah.
scratching the surface looking for that one thing that was going to be the spark that took over and the fire exploded. And this is going to be it. I am like super close to ready to release it all and really start that aspect. But it's a whole thing. You know, it's a very important piece of the puzzle. But the inclusion piece alone, I believe, you know, some conferences I'm getting ready to speak at soon. I'm speaking about this very thing of transformational techniques for facilitation, and personalization is one of them. And the second one for me is going to be inclusion, and the third one is going to be experiential learning. So those three things put together the special spark that I believe is going to really help send people to a next level kind of transformational experience when it comes to facilitation.
I love all of this. I can't wait to just keep watching all that you're putting out for us to learn from, Rusty, and to be around. Your energy is amazing. When I saw you a few months ago, I was kind of shopping this idea that I wanted to do this as a concept. You and I had just officially just met, I think, in that moment. Like you said, I was the first person that you spoke to at conference a couple months ago. And I thought to myself, when you said that, reminded me of that today, I thought, but I feel like I've always known you. And I definitely know that I should have always known you.
Hmm.
But what an amazing thing to be learning more about you today and to feel that connected to you instantly. Like as soon as
Hmm.
you sat down, I'm like, Rusty, we have finally come together.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's interesting, you know, having been in the circuit, you know, the learning and development world, you know, I've always seen, you know, your name at conferences and seen you going by. I've read the books, huge fan. In fact, you spoke at our ATD chapter at Central Indiana, you know, for one of our conferences. So it's not like, you know, it's one of those things where we've known each other but didn't know each other, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
one of those kind of, you know, serendipitous moments when I sat down at that table at the ICE conference for ATD back in May. First session, 8 o'clock in the morning. You know, had just got through teaching 3 days of facilitation for the conference, or structural design for the conference, and first session, first thing. And then I get home from the conference and I see a post about people that are artists and facilitators. I'm like, that's me. That's totally me. What are we doing here? I want to be a part of what's going on. You know, but it was in that moment you kind of talk about, you know, you just feel an instant connection. And that's the kind of thing that I think people want to feel in learning. You know, they want to
Yeah.
be able to sit down and experience, because most people come into a learning experience with just a little bit of anxiety because they're like, maybe I won't know the people in the room, or
This is
maybe
gonna be hard
I've
to learn. I might not do it right.
Yep. I
Yeah.
had a bad learning experience recently where it was no fun and I was bored the entire time and didn't learn anything. Is this going to be another one of those?
Another
No,
one of
so
those.
well, I
Yeah.
use a lot of different techniques for even the first thing they step foot in the room to really start building that connection piece for me. That's really where it all starts from. Even to me, the first communication that I send to learners a week before they step foot in
Yes.
the room, it starts for me there because I'm already asking them for something, and that always seems to come back in my feedback that was the thing that impressed them the most is some of
I
those
do the same.
strategies.
I've been leaning into storytelling. That's a little on the funny side. And then I ask for something from them so I can get to know them before I've even officially met them.
So
I
I
love that.
actually asked for them to share a list of their favorite pump up songs and
Yeah,
all
I ask
of,
for songs
yeah,
too, of
yeah, yes,
course,
so
because
same thing
music
I
is a
do.
great connector.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. I play all of their music for 3 days, every break, every lunch. It's all their music, and then it leads to whole other stories. It leads to whole other opportunities for connection, which the introduction story for my book comes from just that playlist that I had a delivery in Nebraska that just like tears were had. It was that great of an experience. So it's a story for the ages.
I can't wait to read more about that.
Yeah, it
Well,
was
I
great.
want you to know that you're part of the idea and the conceptualization of this entire podcast series because I was talking to you about that at that
Mm,
conference.
yep.
And then when I came back and when I drove to that conference and I was driving
Yes.
back and I'm like, I guess it's a podcast. And so some of the conversations that you and I were having,
Hmm.
I was like for example, I want to talk to Rusty more, and I want to hear some of these songs or voice. I want to hear some of your voice. In fact, on that note, is it weird to ask you? Is there anything? What's the way to ask this? I mean, I don't want to make you sing anything unless we were to be like, oh God, that was great, thank you. But is there anything that you could that you could teach us that comes from the world of music for you that we would maybe be able to use in our own training or our own presenting? And maybe something that's like a normal thing that you do that maybe wouldn't be necessarily known from somebody who isn't an opera singer in your case, or a choral director?
You know, in the world of singing, it's really goes back to again the practice, practice, practice piece for me. Just because we have lessons every single week, you have choir rehearsals every single week. When you're in opera programs, you have opera rehearsals every single night of the week. You're practicing bits and pieces, you're practicing scenes, you're practicing language, you're practicing how to take care of your voice, which is a big one. So you mentioned Cyndi Lauper and Freddie Mercury. Those singers had a very long career in singing because they knew how to sing. They knew how to sing correctly. You know, there is a piece of singing correctly. I've actually had people ask me, do I know actually vocal coaches that would coach them as presenters because they want to be able to project better, or they want to be able to breathe better because you are talking sometimes for 8 hours a day. So I really do think the practice piece is a bit of it too, because every single morning, if I've got a 3-day delivery of a certification, I will get up 3 hours before the class starts. I will go to a coffee shop and I will put my ears in and put on music, and I will look through every single piece of the content for that day. Even though I've trained that single thing 70 million times, I'm still going to practice it that morning for at least 2 hours. When I speak at conferences, God love them, whoever's on each side of my hotel room have heard my presentation 3 times each on each side. But I do. It really comes down to practicing, because if you haven't practiced your material, then you are going to have to think about and use the energy of what's coming next instead of how can I make this more engaging. You're too concentrated on the content. You're less thinking about how can I customize this experience to make it learner centered. You're having to concentrate too much on the content. So practice, practice, practice. And then also my second thing is to consider how you treat your voice. I have things that I do every single morning. Like literally I do sing all morning. That's why I put my ears in while I'm looking through the stuff, is because even that little bit of talking or drinking hot tea will get the voice ready. So you're not going straight into an 8 o'clock session having not prepared your voice,
Do
because
you warm
that's
up your
what will
voice by
damage.
singing songs? Is that your vocal warm up?
A lot of the time, yep. And I
Yeah.
won't even sing them loud. I will just lightly hum them, lightly sing them in the car on the way to the venue. Or a lot of times, I will always make sure I'm at the venue at least an hour early. Most learners like to come in 30 minutes early. Most of the time, you'll find me the 30 minutes before that, dancing around the room, singing as loud as I can to the speaker that I've got in the room with my playlist on it. And so I'm getting the movement, I'm getting the singing, I'm getting the vocal ready. And so 30 minutes when they come in, their music starts, and I can start visiting with them about, how was your night last night? What do you do? Let me know more about you, type of thing. So I do a lot of singing. I do a lot of vocal preparation, but I also have a lot of troubleshooting techniques in my toolbox, as I call it, for, that time that you're traveling and your allergies hit. This is what happens. So
Yeah.
I do have a toolbox of things that I carry with me for if that happens.
Yeah. So it's like you're taking care of the tool
Yep. Yeah,
that
because without
that
your voice, you can't do anything.
what do we have? Yeah. I warm up with music too, and then also classic warm up, vocal warm up exercises, but then I sort of let them play out
hmm
in my favorite songs that do different things. I pretend to be a singer, is what my thing is.
No one has to pretend. As long as you enjoy it, that's all that matters.
Aw. Rusty, I could talk to you all day, and I am so excited for all the things that you're creating and bringing into the world that will soon be available to us. Where can people connect with you, learn more about you? Importantly, where can we go to listen to you sing? Are there any videos out on the YouTubes of you anywhere where
There,
we can listen
there
to some opera?
are there are some YouTubes out there. My first name is really Jonathan, so my more classical stuff is Jonathan Shields on YouTubes. That's my legal first name. And then Russell is my middle name, where Rusty came from. I was born a redhead. So if you search Rusty, you can probably find quite a few anthems or a few events that I sing as private events. So for my singing, it's usually YouTube. I do have a Facebook account for all of my business stuff and my personal account, so you can look for Rusty Shields or Developify Consulting on Facebook. And then, of course, my LinkedIn profile. I do have a personal profile and a business profile page for my company. So same thing, Rusty Shields or Developify Consulting. And then my website is www.developify.com. So any of those places will take you to each of those other places. Would love to just connect with anybody. I'm a connector. In fact, Facebook warned me last week that I'm at the 5,000 friend mark. So I had to do some very sad, intentional deleting of people I haven't talked to in like 8 or 9 years. So sadly, they don't allow more than 5,000. So it just tells you how much I love having people.
I didn't know that. We have a limit of how many people we're allowed to know on Facebook.
I know.
And then you have to become a different kind of account or something.
I think so. And
To
then
followers.
yeah.
Wow.
I did want to say also that I have my little virtual hero that you gave me from the conference, by the way, sitting by my desk. So there, that is right there. Just letting you know that I've
Love it.
still got that.
I love it so much. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we'll make sure to put all of those links and all that information in the show notes. And I just have enjoyed talking to you today and learning more about the work that you do and just your wonderful, wonderful self. You are an incredible connector, no doubt. And you can just feel it even through this webcam today. Thank you, Rusty. It's been a joy.
That's your spark. Now go light something up. And hey, if this episode lit you up, share it with a friend, a fellow facilitator, or someone who needs a little more connection in their day. Be sure to follow the Spark Konnect so you don't miss what's next. We've got more brilliant voices, bold ideas, and heart-forward conversations coming your way. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and keep showing up.